Welcome to Research and Evaluation Classroom. So in today's tutorial, I'd like to show you how to record excerpts and also how to analyze your data. So sometimes as you're coding, you may notice that one code has a lot of repetitive data that could be grouped into just a few meaningful categories. So for instance, we have this reading by others code, and as you can see, it has no child codes. Perhaps as you are, right now it has 60 excerpts. Perhaps as you are coding into this code, you notice that respondents are talking about reading by brothers, and then also a lot of respondents are talking about reading by sisters, and then maybe 3 or 4 respondents are talking about reading by uncle, reading by aunt, reading by grandma. And you might decide to categorize the data into reading by brothers, reading by sisters, and reading by other relatives. And in the other relatives code, you'd put in the aunt, uncles, grandma, and you know, things like that. And so the way you would go about it is to create a new code. You could call it reading revised or whatever you'd like to call it. Submit, and then you would add your new child codes. Sorry, I use NVivo as well, and they refer to nodes as opposed to codes. So if I say nodes, I really mean codes, but I'll try to remember to say codes using the Dedoose language here. So reading by brothers, submit. Reading by sisters, submit, and reading by other relatives, submit. Okay, so now you have your new code with the 3 child codes that you're planning on having. So then you go to your original code and you click on the excerpts, and then you just double click the first one to activate it. You'll see that nothing has happened, but something has happened in the background. So you close this out, and as you can see, it opened the first excerpt. So, and by the way, I'm using the data that comes pre-programmed into Dedoose. Just thought to attribute my sources here. So you'd read your excerpt. Let's suppose this respondent was talking about being read to by their sister. And so you'd highlight it and then code it, the reading revised, reading by sisters. Then you'll click the next excerpt. Suppose this one was talking about being read to by their brothers. Highlight it, code it under reading by brothers, and click next. Suppose this one was talking about being read to by their being read to by their uncle and aunt. So you'd highlight it, reading by other relatives. Next. And then you keep doing this on and on and on. And sometimes as you're even recoding, you'll realize that, oh, I initially thought the major ones were brothers and sisters and then a few ones for other relatives, but reading by father is also a really major one that keeps reoccurring in my data. And so you will just add in a new child code, reading by father, submit, and you would highlight it, you know, encode under reading by father, and keep going. But the point here is that qualitative analysis is really an iterative process. Sometimes when you get into the coding process, you don't quite know, you know, what your coding structure ought to be, especially if you're using grounded theory, whereby your codes are really emerging from the data. They're not predetermined in any way. Sometimes it's hard to know that going in, but the good thing with analyzing using a software is that you can adjust your coding structure, you can make changes, and so you don't feel like you need to come in knowing, you know, how you want this to look. So I hope that's helpful. So the other thing I wanted to show you is how to analyze your data. So to analyze data, you go to Analyze up here. Now your home screen here would have the codes by descriptor, and this displays the data by your demographic characteristics. So I mean, it displays the codes by your demographic characteristics. So in this case, we have population density, zip code, and SCS, okay? And as you can see, all the codes are here. Right now it's set to population density, but let me just set it to socioeconomic status. And we have high, SCS, low, and moderate. And as you can see, all the codes are analyzed by SCS. And this is great because, for instance, if we look at morning routine, you can say out of all the respondents that said they have a morning routine, 54.5% were from moderate socioeconomic status households, 27.3% from low SES, and 18.2% from high SES. And this is helpful because a lot of times clients or stakeholders would like to know what percent of respondents share a certain perspective, either by rural, urban, male, female, or whatever other demographic variables you have. And this is one way you can do that. And you can also export this graphic to Excel. And you can save it to wherever you'd like. I already did this just to expedite things a little bit. So I have it on my desktop, but here it is. And you could, reformat your graphic or make whatever changes you'd like, but that's one helpful one. The other one that I like to use is under code charts. Okay, and it's called code co-occurrence. This just shows you, gives you a visual of your codes and how your codes are related to each other. And the red ones are usually the ones that have high co-occurrence. So for instance, here it's showing us that whenever we code letter recognition, we also code reading. So that's not super informative in this case, but depending on your research question, sometimes it might be helpful to know how your codes are related to each other. So do you find that whenever you code, say, failed projects, you also tend to code low sustainability, and that kind of shows you that they tend to go together. So it just depends on your research question. In this case, it might not be super useful, but you might find it useful in other applications. The other one that I use almost all the time is the code application way of analyzing data. And this just shows you all of your codes by the media. So if you have transcripts, your transcripts will be listed here and the codes, and you can see how many codes are in each transcript. Okay, but what's really useful is at the bottom here, it gives you a tally of all the codes of all the excerpts, I mean, in the codes. And if you click on it, it can open up the excerpts. But in this way, you can say if you had 100 respondents and 60 say they were read to by others, and that's why, you have 60 excerpts in that code, you can then write in your report that 60% of respondents said that they're read to by others. And if you say, only one person here said they're read to by their father, so you can say 1% of respondents say they're read to by their father, and so that can be really helpful, again, because people like to know well, how important is this finding? Was it a lot of people that said this? Was it a few people? And so this code applications helps you to be able to say that. Now, one last one that I like in NVivo, but is not in Dedoose, is the word frequency cloud. Dedoose has a code cloud, which I don't find to be extremely helpful, which just shows you like with all your codes, how many excerpts are in there. And so the really big ones mean that there are lots of excerpts in those codes, and the tiny ones show that there are few excerpts. So like reading has 91, and say bedtime routine has 2. So that's not really helpful. But you could use an outside word cloud generator like wordclouds.com. www.wordclouds.com has one that you could use. And so what I would do is to go to my codes, and the one that I want to use a word cloud, for instance, pre-writing activities. You open up the excerpts, and then you export this into Word. Okay, you just uncheck all of this stuff. All right, then you export. I already did this ahead of time, so it's right here. And so you just highlight all of that and copy it, and you'd go to wordclouds.com and hit wordless, paste or type text, and just paste your text right there and hit apply. And you'll have a word cloud where the words that are really big show that they were mentioned a whole lot, and then the ones that are tiny show they weren't mentioned that much. And you can edit your word list to delete words such as whale, which is not a reading activity, but it's high up in your list. Things like likes. You know, you can just make changes here to remove some words that are shown to be high frequency, but they really are not what you're looking for. And you hit apply and close. And you can even put your word cloud in different shapes, like a heart or whichever shape you like, though I like to use a circle just to keep things professional. But again, this depends on just your research question and what you're trying to communicate. So for instance, if a project, a program wanted to know, well, which of our specific interventions do participants know of, you know? And some participants mentioned that they know about their education projects, or others their health projects or agriculture projects. And you can just throw all of that data into Word Cloud and just see which ones are they mentioning a whole lot, and perhaps education will be in big letters, and so you'd know that, you know, education is what they really know about. And you could just you know, save this image and copy it into your report, just to give a visual, but that's something you could do as well. So that's all I had in terms of recoding your excerpts and analyzing your data. I wish you well with your qualitative analysis. Thank you.